The town of Millhaven had always been a quiet place, nestled in a valley where the mountains seemed to hold it in a perpetual, sleepy embrace. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone, where the most exciting event of the year was the Fall Harvest Festival, and where the shadows grew long and deep as soon as the sun dipped behind the western peaks. For most, this was a comfort. For a few, it was a warning. It began, as these things often do, with something small. A feeling of being watched, that couldn't be shaken. The local mechanic, old Ben Crawley, swore he saw a man standing in the middle of Pine Road every night at 3:07 a.m., just beyond the reach of his porch light. The man never moved, never spoke, just stood facing Ben's house. Ben stopped sleeping. He started drinking his coffee black, and staring out the window, waiting. When he finally called Sheriff Miller, they found nothing. Not a footprint, not a broken twig. Just a cold spot on the asphalt, that made the sheriff's breath fog in the July heat. Then it was the water. Mrs. Henderson, who lived in the white Victorian on the hill, complained that her tap water tasted of soil and decay, like drinking from a muddy grave. The town council tested it. The reports came back pristine, better than bottled. But when she poured a glass, it was the color of weak tea, and smelled of wet earth. Her prize roses, which she watered faithfully, withered and turned black overnight, their petals crumbling to dust at a touch. The children were next, and they started dreaming the same dream, a dream of a long, narrow hallway with peeling floral wallpaper, and a single, flickering bulb at the far end. In the dream, they would walk, their bare feet cold on the wooden floorboards, drawn toward a closed door at the hallway's end. From behind the door came a sound, a low, wet, rhythmic scraping, like a spade digging into thick clay. None of them ever saw what was behind the door. They'd wake up screaming, their sheets tangled, their feet caked with a fine, gray dust that wasn't there when they went to bed. Sheriff Eleanor Miller was a practical woman, by all accounts, a woman of great integrity. She'd taken over from her father, and believed in facts, evidence, and the simple, sometimes cruel, logic of a small town. But the facts were starting to curdle, and it was, truly, unsettling. The calls came in nightly now, whispers on phone lines that should have been dead, reflections in mirrors that showed a room empty, save for the person looking into it. A pervasive, sweet-rotten smell drifted through the streets at dusk, no matter which way the wind blew, and it was a smell that seemed to cling to everything. The breaking point was the photographs, and it was a moment that would change everything. In every family portrait, school picture, or casual snapshot developed at the town's lone pharmacy, a new figure began to appear. It was always in the background, slightly out of focus. A tall, thin man in a dark, old-fashioned suit, his face a smudge of pale gray, standing perfectly still. He was under the slide at the playground, and he was between the trees in the woods behind the high school. He was in the back row of the church choir, his head tilted at an unnatural angle. No one remembered seeing him when the picture was taken. But there he was, a silent witness woven into the fabric of their memories, and it was a presence that was both captivating and terrifying. Eleanor started digging, not in the present, but in the past, remembering the stories, and the legends, that had been passed down. She spent days in the town's dusty archive room, in the library basement, and it was there that she found it, in a ledger from 1892. The town, then just a mining settlement, had been struck by a wasting sickness, a mysterious illness that had left people pale and listless, complaining of cold and terrible thirst. They died quietly in their beds, and the town was left to wonder what had caused it all. The town doctor, a man named Alistair Finch, had a theory. He believed it wasn't a disease, but a presence that fed on loneliness and silence. He wrote of a ritual to bind the hungry shade to a specific place, a convergence of ley lines just outside the original town boundary. The ritual required a voluntary anchor, a living person to tether it, and this thought sent a shiver down Eleanor's spine. The ledger entry ended abruptly, leaving her with more questions than answers. The last page was a census record, Dr. Alastair Finch, deceased, 1892, cause of death, listed as misadventure. His body was never found, and this only added to the mystery. The convergence point, according to Finch's crude map, was the old Henderson property, the very land where the Victorian now stood. Eleanor drove up the hill, the sweet rotten smell thickening in the air, and it was, truly, overwhelming. Mrs. Henderson was gone, having fled to her sisters in the city, but the house stood empty, and yet, it didn't feel empty. The front door was unlocked, and this was an invitation, of sorts. Inside, the dream became real, the hallway, the peeling floral wallpaper, the single, flickering bulb, it was all so familiar. The sound, scrape, it was a sound that seemed to come from nowhere, and everywhere, at the same time.